All right. Hello, I'm Sam Irvin here in Asheville, North Carolina, in Irvin Music Studio for another weekly Wednesday Irvin Music Studio 8 to 10 p.m. live stream. That's a working title, although another working title that came up this week is The Eighth Note. I think I'll ask my guest how he feels about that right now. I've got Jim Genaro on. Um, we know each other from working at Moog, where he still works in the Moog store, but he's also a fantastic composer, producer, event organizer. Yeah, why don't you come on down? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Well, sorry, I'm off to a great start here.
That's okay. I try to make it a little bit more talk showy every time. I think next week I might mention the weather.
You need a band, like I want like entrance music next time.
That's true. We had this great jam set up for the sound check earlier. We should have just had that playing.
Yeah.
But then there's nobody to turn it off, I guess.
You need like a band leader who can like come up and sort of join us at some point too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like better jokes, but like not, just a couple of better ones. He knows like when to walk away to.
Sounds good.
So where to start? We worked at Moog for some year. How long have you been at Moog?
That's a hard question because I left and came back. I think 8 years or so altogether. But I was here 2007 to 2010, and then I left for a long while and came back about 5 or 6 years ago. So
okay, gotcha. 5 or 6 years ago. I think I started working there 7 years ago and left 2 years ago. So I was there with you a big stretch of my time there. And now you're in the Moog store still?
Yeah.
It's like the cushiest job.
It is the cushiest job.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that publicly but everybody knows it's the cushiest job at the place.
I know. You still work hard there, but you get to be around. I don't know. You get to talk about the instruments and showcase them for people.
Yeah, it's wild because on the one hand, yes, it's like super cushy and there's a lot of time that it's like really chill, but it's actually a very specific skill set, and it's funny because like we were at one point we were trying to hire somebody and nobody in the factory applied even because I think it's like the intersection of people that can like really talk about synthesizers in depth and the people who are very comfortable like in like social situations isn't entirely like
Venn diagram.
It's like the Venn diagram that's like a circle. There's really like just like three of us in the center of that circle.
Barely touching.
But no, it's awesome. I get to like talk about synthesizers all day and and then I've learned a lot. Like I didn't know anything about Eurorack stuff when I first started there, and I've gone pretty deep down that rabbit hole. And it also didn't the way it worked out was like I got the job. I got moved into the store in December of 2019, so there was only like a few months before the pandemic hit, and then there was a long period where things were kind of slow for obvious reasons, and so I got to like really explore a lot of that stuff. But now it's like full swing. Like we're just slammed every day. But
yeah, I believe it. Huge tours. Yeah, the Moog store doesn't just move Moog gear. Right. It's got a ton of Eurorack stuff and other synthesizers. So you have to have a really huge knowledge base to talk to anybody about anything at any given time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we give tours, cool. And right now that looks like more like presentations in the store. But I've actually really dove and dived. I've taken a deep dive into the the kind of the history presentations that we do because we haven't been able to go into the factory for so long. So like it used to be we talk for like 15 minutes and we go into the factory and show people around. Well, they've closed off the factory to the public during the pandemic, so we've had to kind of like develop these kind of historical tours and it's been really fun. Like I have a lot of natural sort of performative tendencies anyway, so it's kind of turned into like an hour of really solid material that I've been developing.
Yeah, that's cool. Like an hour long stand up, but Do you have some go-to jokes that you throw
I
in?
do. I have jokes I do every single time, and I get like a huge laugh. And I'm like,
Nice.
I mean, it's weird
Polishing.
because like I don't know if you've, this is probably it's probably like being I know you play a lot of weddings and stuff where you're probably playing the same material over and over. Like that's not my experience as a performer. So like most of the things I've done have been like short runs or like I had this kind of like theater troupe, the circus troupe for a long time, and like we would put so much energy into making a show, but then we would do it like once and then start all over again. And like this is kind of such the opposite of that. It's like taking it's a thing where you're like crafting one set and you do it every day, and and you get to like you figure out like what works and what doesn't work, and then it gets kind of it gets tedious and you try new things. You get to where you can like do it like without even being fully conscious the whole time. It's just kind of like you're just kind of in the zone. But yeah, it's been a new experience doing something that way.
That's cool. More so, the wedding music I feel like is constantly being refined in that way, but my repertoire moves around a little bit, and there's always requests that I have to learn. But I think teaching instruments where I'm teaching Ode to Joy over and over, I get to throw out more jokes about Beethoven's stomach aches and stuff like that.
Nice.
Try to keep it fun for me, so you stay more than halfway conscious of it. Do you use an analog projector? To like click through?
No, we have been talking about getting some stage props. Like the only thing that I like some things I've added are like at some point I picked up a copy of Switched on Bach, which is this like seminal Moog synthesizer record, and so I kind of use that as a prop, and like I've talked about kind of getting more of that going, and it seems like if this is going to continue where we're not doing tours, and I do have some schemes about getting some like visual aids and stuff, but probably not a projector.
Yeah, okay. Got like a big Bob Moog head. Like
There could be
sort of.
costumes.
Well, let me pause you
yeah.
right there because I'm getting paranoid that the sound isn't working, and I always
Some, like,
want
visual
to check
aids and
it.
stuff,
Oh, we sound
probably not a
crystal
projector.
clear.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Sorry, not the most professional. It's still coming together.
No, that works. That's great.
I need a little mixer for this that just shows me the levels somehow.
Yeah.
That might be. So what other costumes do you have in mind?
So I don't know about costumes, but I have thought about. I've given serious consideration to some songs, like. I don't know if it's still true, but when I was younger, especially a lot of times people would tell me I looked like Gene Wilder a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And so I kind of developed this kind of like Willy Wonka shtick that I would do. So I've actually thought about like writing a song that's like come with me and you'll be in a world of waveform modulation.
Okay.
Something like that. I don't know. Like
Good stuff.
I'm not going to actually do that, but I do kind of like the whole like chocolate factory.
Oh gosh.
Whoa, what is going on? I'm hearing myself in your pocket. People would tell me I looked like Gene Wilder.
This live stream is just spilling out of everywhere. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna turn that down. Oh, but you know what? That has reminded me that I haven't broadcasted on Instagram. Let's get that started. They will just have missed the first part of it.
Oh.
The Instagram one is sort of the behind the scenes one anyways. All right, Instagram, another late start. I think
You missed so much good content, Instagram. I really feel for everyone out there on Instagram watching this.
I know. Well, if they're interested in catching up, they can go to the YouTube feed where it actually counts views. Oh, yikes. But we do want it to look pretty. Okay, great. Yeah, they missed your Willy Wonka impression. I think it would be great to do it Broadway. Is there a Willy Wonka Broadway show? But where you're just so like filled with emotion about a certain topic that you burst into song rather
Right.
than some intro song and like sort of out of nowhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that episode of Buffy where, anyway, yeah.
I gotta catch up. on
That's
Buffy.
fine. There's if you see one episode of Buffy, it should be the musical episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I'll keep that in mind. And that's what we came here to talk about. I've never watched, but we're gonna watch the musical. We'll be right back. No, let's see. love your new album.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really moves around. It sounds sharp, like really um, jagged, you know, defined. And I was really bummed out that I missed like your album release party. I had a gig that night and I couldn't. I was really trying to make it. I'm so sorry.
Well, here's my shameless plug: is that if you missed my album release, it's Saturday at the Moog store. Actually, I'm playing at Synth Saturdays. We do a monthly event, so you could come down to the Moog store and see it. But,
Awesome. This Saturday?
yeah, I think I'm playing at 4:00. So.
And that is the 30th?
The 30th, Saturday the 30th at the
4
Moog
o'clock.
store downtown, but
On Broadway.
on Broadway.
You can get a beer at Archetype afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I've been really wanting to go to the synth. Do you guys do lectures too?
I'm gonna actually, I actually am this time. Not a lecture per se, but like a demonstration. So, one of the things that I do a lot in my live performances, I use the theremin as a controller for typically for my Voyager. But we just came out with the sort of the updated Etherwave Theremin, and it's got 1/8" CV outs, and so. If you've never seen this, for anybody watching, like basically, a theremin traditionally is like an instrument that you play by moving your hands around the antenna, and it has kind of a limited range of what it sounds like. So the phrase "cat torture" has sometimes, and because it's hard to play, because most people can't play a theremin. I certainly cannot play a theremin, but
Sort of like a saw.
Yeah, it's like a saw.
If you're a hillbilly watching this.
Well, I've actually always wanted to do like a dueling, like a saw and theremin duet.
That would be haunting.
It would be. It would either be like the best idea I've ever had or the worst, and I'm not sure which.
You slap enough reverb on there.
Yeah.
Just long tail, and then a couple other theremin players who are controlling things about the reverb.
Yeah. Well, you could do it with the same theremin. So that's what I'm doing this kind of demonstration on, is the fact that you can take a CV from the Etherwave Theremin, and you can apply it to, say, the filter of your instrument, your synthesizer, and then and actually, like, with just a little bit of some extra steps of using a computer with a DC coupled interface, you can actually control things on the computer, and that's where it gets really wild too, because you can like map things in Ableton and pretty much manipulate anything with a theremin, and then you're into like serious like sound wizard territory.
Yeah, that is a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
for sure.
So at 2:00 I'm doing a presentation about all that. And there's another DJ who I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's like capital E, lowercase m, capital E, E-M-E, M-A, I don't know.
Okay.
Eam.
So what time does the event start?
Doors open at noon, and they'll just be like, basically the store will be there, but really like presentations and music starts at 2. So.
Okay, cool. At the Moog store. That's great.
Free iced coffee.
Ooh, all right. So we can stay awake.
Point. Yeah, you get real caffeinated. But.
So with your album, I've found that like I'm interested in like challenges and solutions, during these conversations with guests. Did you have any specific challenges, like, oh, I want to do that, but I can't figure out quite how to do it? Like any walls that you hit that you had to jump over?
That's an interesting question.
It doesn't have to be technical. It could be moral.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, there's all kinds of challenges to doing a project of that scale. So, like, just for some context, the album is inspired by the pandemic, basically, and the experiences of that. And it started with this myth that I read about of Coronis, who, without getting too deep into it, basically it's a story of like a mortal woman who was Apollo's lover, and she is he murders her, he kills her in a jealous rage, and then he regrets it and tries to save her, and as he's trying to save her, he uses all of his power to kind of heal her, but he can't heal her because he's already kind of like, the fates have already kind of been set in stone, or her fate has been set in stone, And but anyway, the baby that comes out of her is, and he ends up like having to like cut the baby out of her. And I mentioned she's pregnant with his child. So anyway,
Okay.
Asclepius, the god of medicine, is the child that is born of this. So there's a whole kind of theme around like, death and difficulty and suffering and like but healing that comes out of it. And of course, with the name Coronis, it was interesting because of this is something that was coming up right at the beginning of the pandemic, and the coronavirus and all that was on my mind. And so yeah, I mean, there's things that I think, like the whole process of it with the challenge is like writing about material that's, coming from kind of a pretty dark place, but not having it, just be, lots of wailing and I don't know. I mean, it's a kind of a strangely upbeat album, I think, for something about that experience, or at least that's how I see it. I don't know if it's other people would see it that way, but so there was a
Definitely got like the Nine Inch Nails and Tool rock like influence.
Yeah, very. I mean, I actually sing at one point, which is like that was the hardest thing for me was singing, honestly, because I sing in other contexts. I have this whole kind of circus shtick that I do with the Surreal Circus, and I've done a lot of singing in that. And then I have like Logos is my musical project, and it's much more kind of serious and electronic and like.
That's a serious name.
Yeah, it's
sure.
a serious name, like it's a serious project, and whereas with the Surreal Circus, I can be very playful and silly and fun and stuff. With this, it's like and I've always been like kind of reticent about using my voice or singing in that context because I don't think it's not that I'm a bad singer, but I'm not a very trained singer, so I don't have any kind of real training with it. But
it's very personal. It's so close to you. It's part of your physiology. I feel when I'm singing that I'm like revealing too much or something.
Yeah.
It's impossible to be private. There's nothing in between your voice and the listener. There's not like an instrument in between.
Yeah, and what really worked out. So I recorded. I have a friend who's an engineer out in Chattanooga, and I did a lot of the recording out there. So the vocals, the drums, and and he did the mixing as well. But and it was something like I realized I'd never done this. Like I'd never been in the studio, on the other side of the sound booth, like singing before. I've done a lot of recording singers. And I just wanted to kind of have that experience. Like I could have sung it at home, but I wanted to kind of like have someone else be in charge and doing all the technical things. And yeah, he did like a really great job of just like kind of, being almost like my cheerleader and stuff. I mean, it's funny because I'm against this little booth and I'm like, and I can hear him between takes and he's like, "Nah, it's okay. I think you did better." He's like, "Yeah, man, that's the one." He's like a super enthusiastic dude. And yeah, William did a great job with all that. But yeah, and I didn't even want to sing it. Honestly, I would try to get someone else to sing it, but they were not. There's someone who probably would have been a better vocalist, honestly, but he wasn't able to do it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna sing this myself, and I'm glad I did because it kind of brought things out of me that yeah. I don't know if the singing is great. I still cringe a little bit when I hear my voice, but I don't hate it. So that was the accomplishment, was like I can listen to it and not hate my voice. So
Are you going to sing it at the Moog store on Saturday?
no, I'm not gonna sing at the store. I'm gonna do like some of the songs from Coronis as well as some older songs. So.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna do that one.
Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering you singing. I'm sure it was great. I definitely don't remember.
This is all I need. All I need is for you not to remember it as like, oh, that was terrible. I can't believe Jim did that. So if you don't remember it, then mission accomplished.
Scanning through, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, I'm just blown away by your like synth aficionado status, like such complexity of the sounds going on.
Thank you.
And you wear a bunch of hats. I want to talk about the landing where you live too.
Okay.
And you mentioned the circus sort of role that you live in. Do you organize a lot of events like your album?
I do. Yeah.
Because the landing is a venue in town.
Yeah, it's so
like a living space art.
Yeah, it's
thing?
somewhere in between all the above. So the landing is like I call it a quasi-intentional community. It's not it doesn't really have like a central focus as much as it's like a sort of it's like an urban community where people live, and they have different projects that people work on. I don't actually live there, although I did for a couple years, but I've always had like a studio, and I was involved in starting it up in 2008. So
Okay.
but so my role at the landing right now is there's kind of these two spaces that are like kind of the public spaces of it. There's a lot of other like residences and stuff, but there's Everland, which is like kind of the what people think of as the landing, which is like the venue where we have kind of big shows. And I put on I'm part of a group of people mostly that puts on some events. We do a major winter solstice thing called Dreamtide, which is 200-300 people. It's pretty elaborate deco. There's bands and DJs, and it's pretty extensive. We burn an effigy at the end of the night, kind of Burning Man style event. But and I'm one of 6 people that sort of manages that space. But then I also have a smaller space that I call.
Are there how often are there shows? Do you guys rotate through, like having to man them? You know?
Yeah, it's not. Obviously the past couple years there hasn't been very many shows at all.
Yeah.
We did do Dreamtide last year. We had our own little super spreader event over there, but we no, for the most part there's 2 big ones. There's like the winter solstice, and then we've started doing a summer solstice thing that's like during the day and outdoors. But there are other things that sometimes people rent it. We have there's one that hasn't happened since the pandemic that a lot of people come to called Cambient Amping, which is just play on like ambient camping. So basically, we fill it's like kind of like a renovated warehouse with like a stage and stuff. But and it's not actually the landing that puts it on, but we kind of sponsor it, and some other folks organize it. But they fill the entire place with like bedding and like cushions and even some tents and things. And then they have like something like 72 hours of just ambient music, and like a lot of the modular synth people come out, and there's a whole section of the weekend where it's like modular synths, and it's weird. Like it's the weirdest thing that happens there, honestly. I honestly, I usually kind of come for like a few hours, and because I can't quite just like be that relaxed with people for that long. But so we do those kind of events, and then there's like smaller things. Like I did my album release there, and but yeah, I've done a lot of event production. The next big thing I have. So I've sort of the Surreal Circus is something that I did for many years, and it was effectively dead for more than a decade, but we brought it back last Halloween and did a festival downtown, and I'm going to be doing that again October 29th at the Pack Square Green. So
Okay, awesome.
yeah,
That's cool. And and you said you sing for that? Are you
I
like
yeah I
sort of
do.
a front man for this?
Yeah,
The Willy Wonka of the
I guess I'm sort of the
proceedings?
Willy Wonka of the Surreal Circus. So so the Surreal Circus was like this kind of performance art troupe. I'm wearing this shirt. Actually, a little like free publicity here.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we did. So it was from like 1996 to 2005 that I was involved in this troupe, and so a big chunk of like my early adult years was spent sort of doing this kind of weird performance art thing where, yeah, I was like the sort of musical band leader, was only one of 2 or 3 kind of ringleaders of the whole thing, but and it was circus, but it was not a real circus. It was a surreal circus. It was like a lot of like fewer tricks than like kind of weird skits and things, and but yeah, I wrote a lot of songs for that. That was kind of a part of my shtick, is I wrote kind of funny cabaret songs about magic and stuff.
Okay, fun. I just watched a Tim Minchin performance
I love
today.
Tim Minchin.
Oh, dude, he's so in the pocket.
Yeah. Have you ever heard Storm?
Yeah,
That
the
video
like
is
beat poet,
yeah,
like
it's
beat
brilliant.
poetry.
But
He's a brilliant dude. Um, that's cool. I didn't mean to. I have so many questions to throw at you. I don't even where's my hosting hat. Um, I didn't mean to drag you away from your album if you had more challenges and solutions there, or other challenges, solutions. I think
yeah,
that's going to be my go-to
challenges and
concept as
solutions.
a host of like
I mean,
challenge solutions with the circus thing. Do you have an example of a skit? Was also another
oh man.
like
Well,
a easily summarizable one, like the invisible bench.
yeah, no, so I don't know, like, okay, so for the last show that the Surreal Circus did, it was so we killed this troupe in 2005, and we actually had like a funeral for it. So the last Surreal Circus show was the funeral of the Surreal Circus because we had killed it, and at the time I don't know, when did you come to Asheville?
2009.
Okay, so you wouldn't have been around when this was the case, but the Vance Monument, which for our newer for people who have just come to Asheville, there used to be this like stone obelisk,
This homage
this
to
weird, yeah, racist.
outdated morality.
We had a weird racist tower in our downtown that has mostly been eradicated, but we would do our shows there and kind of at the base of this kind of Egyptian obelisk, and there was a reflecting pond by it. So when we killed the circus, I built a funeral boat. Like I actually built like a wooden boat, and we burned it. We set it on fire in the reflecting pond that was by the monument, and somehow we got away with this. Not sure how that worked out exactly,
Nice.
but like 2 days later they tore the whole thing down, not the monument, but they tore the pond down and built this whole thing, and I always kind of felt a little like I had somehow magically or whatever done that. But so anyway, fast forward to last year was going to be the 25th. Last October was the 25th anniversary of the Surreal Circus, and so I kind of like gathered the troops back together and we did a whole show. But it was, in order to resurrect it, we used the I do a lot with we did a lot with mythology, and including obviously Coronis is mythologically based, but we did this kind of reenactment of the myth of Isis and Osiris, where Osiris was the dead circus, and I did this whole kind of shtick. So I come out and I'm like, we had this kind of parade that opened, and we had a big dragon that came in, and there was this whole thing, and the dragon brings the coffin in. We had like a giant sarcophagus of the circus and places it in front of the stage, and so the dragon leads the parade in, and then I come out and I'm in like coveralls, with a broom, like I'm the janitor sweeping up the place.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's this old shtick that I did from a circus show years ago, but basically like I sing this song. It's about like superheroes and sort of like where have all the superheroes gone, and it's kind of, and there's I give like a little monologue about the way that like Asheville used to have all these kind of like freaks that you'd encounter that were doing all this kind of weird cool stuff, and so I sing a song that's basically like a call to like finding your inner superhero basically, and but it's real campy and kind of like vaudevillian, and because the whole show was like incredibly technically complicated. There were like live streams and video projections, and it's just like and this Real Circus was always notoriously bad at like keeping our tech stuff together. And so of
Yeah.
course there's technical difficulties, and the sound is not working, or the pre-recorded backing tracks are not working. So I end up realizing that like I either have to not do the song or just do it a cappella. So I end up like singing the song like a cappella to like 500 people at Pack Square.
Whoa, the pressure's on.
And it was good. And like honestly, like a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, that was great! I can't believe you did that without the music." But the thing is that I for years had been singing that song in situations where it was a cappella, where I was just like, oh, I've got this song. I had this kind of shtick I would do where it was like, at a party or something, it would come up that I wrote songs for the circus, and I would be like, okay, pick a theme, zombies, superheroes, or lingerie, and I have a song about each, and so and then I would never, I didn't have like backing tracks, so I would sing this song about superheroes, but so it was very comfortable for me to sing it a cappella, but it was definitely like, yeah, I probably would have preferred to have music.
Well, we have another hour and a half, so
Oh, I
there's
don't
plenty
know
of
about
time for
that.
you. All right. Okay, that's really fun stuff for sure. Yeah, I agree that Asheville, even when I came here in 2009, was more alternative, and we could whine about that for a while, I guess. But um, that's really cool. So now that you've resurrected it, is it going to? It's a part of your life again. That's really cool to regain something like that.
Yeah, I guess it is. We're gonna do this show in October. It's been hard because I've been really like focused on the album and stuff. But yeah, it's like crunch time. We got to get this next circus show put together. But October 29th, we'll be doing it. And
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in getting. I've got a buddy coming over tomorrow for the first. We'll see how long this lasts, but to start like a rock project to brainstorm some rock stuff because I come from a rock background, but nowadays I mostly play like classical and jazz. It's really missing in my life. The live stream jams like get noisy and experimental and really rocking sometimes, but to take something out and about and perform something like heavier, like yell a lot, and like thrash around.
Nice.
Get that catharsis.
Yeah.
I'm going after it. Yeah. Let's see. What else am I missing here? We could go back to talking about Moog. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh man. Yeah, I should. I'm sorry. I'm so ill prepared here. I just
Yeah, you're co-hosting, right? I told you
co-hosting.
that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did mention that, but I guess maybe I'm not a great
The band,
co-host.
yeah, the band director just didn't show up.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, yeah. Well, I mean, when we were talking earlier, you were saying how like part of the live stream thing is just to kind of like get yourself, into jamming with people and having conversations. There's like a social, a social outlet, and I think that's really cool. I actually did a series like last winter that I want to bring back where I would bring musicians into my space at the landing and into the smaller room that I actually also manage. And we would do these kind of like I call them deep listening sessions where there would be an audience of maybe 5 or 6 people or and we would just improvise and do stuff together, and it sounds like that's a little bit like the format you're having where you have these kind of improvisational collaborations with an audience, but it's more about just like the experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, so I guess trying to formulate a question here, but
There's no pressure, don't worry.
yeah, so I feel like improvising is like it's not a challenge. Like, I find it very challenging, but not the actual act of improvising, which is actually very easy or natural for me. It's I know I personally get a lot of anxiety around like playing with people, and I don't know where that comes from exactly in my psyche, but like one of the reasons I've gotten so focused in like, making my own music is just that, I have control of everything. And, when I play with other people, it's usually great and I have a good experience, but it's like getting to that point of like, yeah, it's like, yeah, let's get together sometime, and I never follow up on it,
Yeah, I do
Like,
know.
do you, I don't know, do you find that like playing with people is something that comes naturally to you, or do you have,
That's a very well formulated question. Thank you for
Thanks, so
that's
making it up as I went along.
landed in a nice spot. Let's see. I have reservations around it. I think I always identified as a musician growing up, and to the point where I got sort of like haughty about it and arrogant about it, like in high school, like, oh well, I'm learning jazz music or classical music, and so I never like. I was in like a couple of metal cover bands earlier in high school, but I found myself jamming a lot in college, but there was this feeling of like not wanting to just identify as a musician anymore, you know? And I got the philosophy degree and wanted to sort of distance myself from music, especially right after college. And so I was trying to find other ways to socialize that wasn't music. Um, when it comes to jamming with other people, I agree that it is usually super fun. Even if you're not clicking, it's like you're engaging in this vulnerable activity with somebody else, and it really bonds you, I think. Um, but but there are, like, you have to get past sort of the ego that can be difficult for me. I explain to pretty much every guest that I have on, how distracted I am by the technical side of everything. Like, I'm trying to focus on our jam, but I'm like really worried about like how the sound is turning out. Then that makes me worry about being distracted, which makes me play a little more reservedly. And then I worry about that, and that worry can really like interfere um, with, I don't know, get sucking the bone marrow out of that solo, you know. Um, what do you think? Do you think that anxiety? I don't know. I think that probably a universal thing, and people, I wonder, just have to sort of associate that with the thrill or with the social success or stuff like that to I don't know, get up on stage and perform. How about that? Do you find jamming to be different than like a performance? Like, cause
Yeah,
that
yeah,
feels
yeah. The because it's funny, like the performance thing, like I feel very comfortable with. Like I I think some people like having an audience makes them more nervous or more shut down, and some people get really like juiced by it, and like I'm sort of the latter. Like I get really, I can see this even with the tours. It's like the more people in the tour, the more I'm gonna like enjoy it and like cut loose with it, you know.
yeah.
Um, but there's like there's an ego thing about that too. I think that like when you're like, you have some people's attention, that's like it's almost like you're getting some kind of energy from them, and you can like work with that. Versus like playing music with people almost feels more like intimate in a way. Like, um, and this is I don't know, this is probably like a terrible metaphor or whatever. But when you're describing like that feeling of it, like it almost reminds me of like the first time you like hook up with somebody, like you're like just all the weird stuff that like, your first date, let's say your first date with somebody is like you get all these kind of like, am I like talking too much or am I blah, blah. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been on a date, on a first date, but like that kind of
There's still a
stuff. It's like,
responsibility to throw stuff out. You got to keep going.
yeah, you
To
got to keep going, and like there's
keep
always
the
this kind
ball
of
up.
like awkwardness that like eventually goes away, and then there's like actual like connection between people, and I feel like yeah, I don't know, yeah, it's all the weird, like the stuff from being in middle school and being like I don't know about you, but I was like definitely not a cool kid when I was in school, and like there's a lot of like all that kind of anxieties that people have or insecurities and stuff, like I think kind of comes up. But I mean, it was bad when I was younger. Like I was definitely like I always kind of wanted to be in bands, but I was like kind of terrified of you know I'm not that good. And it's true, like honestly I'm not that good. Like I'm not good at like, I mean, I'm an okay piano player or whatever, but I'm not like
Tim
great,
mention or anything.
I'm no Tim Minchin.
Yeah.
Like the most like kind of soul crushing experience I had, it was like in music school, because I did get like a piano performance degree, like barely. I kind of eked out a degree, but you had to be in ensembles. And one time I was like, I'm gonna try a jazz trio because there's limited options for piano players and stuff, and like, and it was just like, I mean, I just didn't know the first thing. Like it was kind of
Oh
humiliating,
no.
like. And like you realize like jazz, like I have mad respect for jazz players. Like you guys are nuts. Like all those chords and those things. Like, I'm like, give me a minor key and some pretty simple chord progressions and I'm good. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's such a scale too. I don't know. I don't feel great at all about jazz. I've got a couple of guests coming up, and I'm like, I have to play with this guy, this jazz guitarist. Oh my gosh.
Well, I will not. I will not make you play any jazz today. Sure.
Yeah, I think I heard a long time ago that you use the same part of your brain to improvise that you use to tell somebody about yourself.
Hmm.
So like your improvisation says, it sort of defines you as a person, at least as well as you could define yourself as a person.
That makes sense because maybe that's why that sense of vulnerability is different. Like when you're improvising in front of people, it's very different than like doing something that you've rehearsed. You know.
Yeah, I wonder if that implies uh yeah, but we all rehearse talking about ourselves to a certain extent. I wonder if that implies that you use the same part of your brain that you use when you're talking about yourself authentically. I don't know, because I never looked up the study.
Hmm.
But I wonder if if you're just saying like I'm a really smart person, I've read 1,000 books, and you're like BSing. If that's using the same part of your brain, I guess so, because that's sort of improv too, like improv comedy.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing I feel like I'm really representing myself with every note that I play. But again, I guess like I was saying about the voice earlier, it's like you're revealing something. I'm the kind of person that would play this note right now.
Funny because yeah, I guess I mean I get that, but I always feel like you know when the improvisation is going well, or not whether it's with another person or not, when you're like in that flow, it feels like it has less to do with me personally. Like I kind of come at it from like a little bit more like woo of a perspective where like to me, part of what makes music is this idea of like the muse, or that there's like something that feels like external to just like my personality that's like coming through it. And that's not to say that like obviously like anything that I'm doing is coming through the filter of like all my experiences and all the music I've listened to and all my my skills and everything. Like it's definitely like an expression of me, but it feels like there's something that's more than me that's like really what's trying to come through it. And to the extent I can kind of get out of my own way, that's you know
That's beautiful, yeah. And I think that's what I was referring to is the worry is when that ego is getting in the way. I'm like, oh, I represent myself, me,
yeah, you're
me.
thinking about the thing that yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But music is the ultimate nexus, Our biology comes into what we're doing, the technology, it's we're really juggling a lot when we enter that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we haven't gotten cosmic yet, though.
I can get cosmic if you want.
What really helps me relax and during a jam is to just think about the infinite multiverse of jams.
Oh yeah.
There's infinite me's playing an infinite variety of.
Somewhere there's some universe where this is the best jam that has ever happened.
Yeah, exactly.
The best of
Blowing
all
the roof
possible
off
jams,
somewhere.
as it were.
Mm.
All right, I have a question I want to pose to you, or just like a
Okay.
proposal that I want to make, and get your thoughts on this. There's been a thing that's been coming up for me lately is that I think it might be time to retire the category of electronic music.
Too broad.
So there's two things. So one, it's too broad, and it kind of feels like saying like no one talks about wood music, or string music. Like yeah, I mean, you might have like there's brass bands, there's brass music or whatever, but like
Mhm.
there's some categories of music there where it's like it's not really about the technology anymore. Like what is string music? Like is it is like heavy metal string music? Like on some level it is. So is bluegrass. So is like violin music.
Mhm.
And also I think that to some extent like all music is electronic at this point. Like you know, not just like listen to any pop song on the radio. It's all like you can, there's synthesizers, there's drum machines, there's Ableton, there's different uh, digital tools and electronic tools, but even like something super acoustic. Like think about what's the most acoustic thing? Like a folk singer playing a guitar. Like they're being recorded to probably to Pro Tools with like some digital modeled compression on their voice and stuff, and like even if it's not, it's ultimately it's gonna you're listening to it on like Spotify, or you're downloading it or whatever. Like I think that electronics has like pervaded every aspect of music, and that it's kind of silly to like kind of lump everything else into that.
I'll give it to you for sure. I think, yeah, no matter what, it's either amplified or recorded. Although, are there exceptions? Like should we be hearing more about acoustic musicians who have recorded directly to vinyl and are only selling vinyl?
I guess you could record to you could record onto tape and then go from tape straight to analog master. My album was mastered analog actually.
Oh yeah?
But
Okay.
but everything else is, but maybe that's like
But it's
electronics still to
electronic.
some degree. It's not
It's a bunch of
digital, but
synths.
yeah. I mean, it's a little bit, I'm being a little facetious here, but I think that I think the idea of like electronic music is this separate thing feels like, it's not going to make, like no one's going to be talking that way 100 years from now, and maybe they shouldn't be now. I don't know.
Yeah. 100 years from now, nobody will be talking. We'll just be on our phones
I mean,
permanently.
for all I know, we might be like eating wild squirrels and
Yeah.
trying to scrounging for radiation tablets or something. That's
Who
pretty
knows?
dark. 100 years from now, there's a lot of possibilities, but
Yeah, I don't know. I've been going out more recently and trying to see live music and just build community and be out on the town, and the bands are very different just in general, difficult to like categorize. I think that everything's just sort of a pastiche and like a jumble of genre, you know?
hmm
Going out to see like a rock band, I mean, the other night I saw three rock bands, including Beekeeper, and two other ones at the Asheville Music Hall, and it was great. But they all sort of went back and forth between like punk and surf music and rock and sort of R&B influences, and um, in a really cool sort of startling like juxtaposition-y way. And I think music's been headed in that direction for a long time too, where everything's sort of a jumble. Um, So should we get rid of all genres? Is my counter
I mean, maybe
point.
so. Genres. I feel like so many of the old categories are just breaking down on like every level. Like genres, and it's like, yeah, genres kind of like it's like gender. It's like, will there still be any genders or genres of music in 30 years at this rate? Probably not.
Yeah,
You know.
that's a good one.
Um,
Just more adjectives. This music is astounding.
yeah.
This person is delightful.
Well, okay. So you said something earlier about identifying as a musician, and like I think that a lot of people sort of identify with different traditionally have identified with like like I'm a rock musician, or I'm a
Yeah,
whatever, I'm a jazz musician and stuff, and like I think some of what is going on just culturally is like the whole sense of identity is kind of like fragmenting into smaller and smaller categories, but like you get to some point where they're so fragmented that like it's kind of a wash of, like you say, like what is, everything you're listening to is like multiple different genres, and like I have a terrible time talking about what style of music I make. I hate that question. Like, and it's, what I end up saying is I talk about the conditions of which my music is created in. So I say, it's influenced by psytrance and electronic dance music, but it also incorporates other live instruments. Like I've told you like things about like what my influences were and what my instrumentation are, but I haven't said anything about the actual object, which is like the music I'm producing. And like you've heard the album. It's like 7 different songs, and they're all completely different styles of music. Like, like I don't,
Yeah.
when you have to do the little drop down menu comes up when you're like uploading your stuff to whatever, to DistroKid or whatever, and it's like, it's electronic. Well, electronic is what I pick because it's the broadest term that applies to like most of the things I'm doing. But there's also like there's cellos in there, and there's a lot of live drums, and a lot of his vocals and things that aren't part of like EDM or whatever usually. Well, vocals I guess are part of EDM, but
Yeah, pendulum comes to mind.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like trying to the ability to like categorize things into separate categories is getting harder and harder. And
Yeah, I think that um, that sometimes I listen to music like academically, and like especially classical music, and like what composer is this, from what time period, from what country? Oh yes, that Italian. I can hear Italy and the 1760s in this, but I don't know if that's a good time in Italian classical history. I'm pulling stuff out, but I
I don't remember much of
I feel like it
music
really.
history classes.
I wonder if it has to do with like the onus is so on the artists to market themselves more than ever. There's more of like an independent uh, drive for artists to sell themselves, and I think the narrative is such a big part of how things get sold these days. And so to know those influences, I feel like it would make it so much more difficult to play blissfully unaware of what your influences are. Say like, oh, we just play rock. I don't know if that sells as well anymore as like, well, yeah, this particular rhythm came from a clave, but it's been modified in the way that this drum and bass rhythm from England.
But who understands that other than other musicians? Like,
Yeah.
are you just playing for other musicians?
I guess you're right.
Like, we're
Yeah.
speaking the language of musicians, but yeah, and like the influences thing, it's like the easiest thing you can do usually is kind of point to like some influences. And okay, I'll tell you something I really love. And I've been doing this lately because after I finish the album, I've been thinking about, I haven't done this yet, but I'm thinking about putting together a Spotify playlist because it's all coming out. It's actually out there now, but I haven't really like made a big deal of it. But it is on Spotify now. But one of the things that they recommend, like, do a playlist with your tracks in it. And I was thinking like, well, what if instead of just doing my tracks, like I did a playlist that's like the album plus the songs and the artists that influenced it.
Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoy is like listening to something and being like, oh, there's that, there's this thing that like wasn't consciously on my mind. Now some of them are like obvious, like obviously like 9 Inch Nails is a big influence, or you mentioned Tool, like that last song definitely has some heavy Tool influence that comes from the guitar player and drummer as much as for me. But but then there'll be like things that like I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize like that's like listening to like Genesis when I was teenager or whatever, or listening to like whatever like, oh yeah, I can recognize like this Juno Reactor track is very much like this section of this. And so I almost feel like I kind of like discover old music that I love by listening to my own music and remembering it. So I kind of want to make like a playlist of all the sources of artistic inspiration.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. And you already did?
No, I'm going. I plan to. I
Okay.
mean, it's
Gotcha.
one of those things that's on my ever expanding to do list. But
I did that the other day just as a thought experiment. I've got a coffee table upstairs with like paint on the top of it. It's like a whiteboard. And I just sat there and like throughout the day I wrote down every band I could think of, really tiny. And by the end of the day there were like 100 or a ton of different names on the table. And it was interesting to just, I don't know, have it all laid out there. Just from thought too, because I think sometimes I'm just scrolling through my Spotify. I get really caught up in the similar playlists. It's difficult for me to branch out. Do you have go-to places to listen to new music?
that's a challenging one. Like so I get a little bit of new stuff from so I work with Zach Briggs, who is he performs as Mordaga. He's my buddy. I sometimes refer to him jokingly as my work wife, because we hang out like all day every day, and we have like this really fun rapport. But he's got a lot of really great sort of musical influences, and like turns me on to stuff sometimes. And I think that's a really interesting thing too. Like,
All right, everybody out there, hit up Zach Briggs.
yeah.
New music.
Good.
Needs.
Follow Mordaga on Instagram. Actually, follow Logos Music ABL also on Instagram.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, Mordaga's got like, and he has very different tastes than me. So like, he kind of introduces me to stuff that like I wouldn't discover. But okay, let me open this whole kind of, because this kind of like leads me to this whole sort of thing I think about a lot, which is like, all right, there's a particular thing that just I cannot stand that happens sometimes, and it's rare that I encounter this these days, especially in the Moog store, where you get a lot of musicians and people that I think are pretty open minded about stuff. But if you ever meet like an old dude, it's always a dude, like the old dude who's like, "Oh, there's no good music that was made after such and such a year."
Yeah,
like
crazy.
That if you ever find yourself saying that, like that should be like the wake up call that like something has gone wrong in your personal development, and you need to like go listen to some new music. Because like what I see, and I just like the slightest from like the slightest slice of the an infinite sorry, I'm running out of metaphors. I want to say like tip of the iceberg, but I start saying the slice of the iceberg. I'm mixing my metaphors up. From my very limited vantage point, there is so much good music out there that we're just completely flooded with like incredible new artists. And what I think happens is like when you're past a certain age, you don't have that kind of friend group where you're getting like new stuff. Like think about how I was in high school, or like even middle school, your friends discover new bands. I see it with my daughter. She was always like, honestly, like I get a lot of cool stuff from my 9-year-old. Like,
yeah,
she'll play
cool.
stuff. I'm like, that's actually really good. It's like, probably a little poppier than what I am into, but some of it's like, that's really good. And I actually will listen to it. And like, I think that also from what I understand about like, how your brain develops, like when you're a kid, it's like music has such a big impact on you. And like I cannot say, for instance, whether or not like 80s pop music is objectively better than most of the pop music since then or not. Like that's kind of that's what I think, but I think that's because that's what I was hearing when I was a kid, and also some of that stuff is really exceptionally good. But
it's hanging in there at the weddings.
yeah, I mean people, but that's because
rocking
people, like, but will it be in like 30 years or 40 years? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Elvis is hanging on there, but
Elvis,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I don't care about
some-
Elvis. No, Elvis is cool, but I mean David Bowie or Prince or all these people. There were I do think there are periods where there's like peaks of, for whatever reason, the culture just spits out some great artists. But what I'm really getting at is that the music you hear when you're a kid, like it kind of imprints on your brain in a different way than it does as an adult. So you kind of have to like work harder at finding new music.
You just made me thought come to my head. Do you think it's America specific, or I guess worldwide? The internet is worldwide. I think, like you mentioned earlier, identity is just fractioning. Everybody's circles are. It's just more and more noise and stuff like that. It sort of made me think of like how Game of Thrones was like the last TV show that we'll all be like stoked on together.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that it used to be much more universal because there was a like period where like American pop culture was exported to everywhere, and there probably are things still that break through like that. But yeah, I do think it's more fragmented now.
Like the David Bowie's out there, but we just don't get to see him. Or like you said earlier, like you get
artistic power, or for lack of a better word, from the eyes, from the attention, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was a feedback loop that like inspired the greatness of those characters through the extreme audiences, you know.
Yeah, I mean, um, well, like you mentioned Game of Thrones, but like I would argue that like the thing that just happened with Kate Bush and Stranger Things is another one of those. Maybe it's not international, but do you know what I'm talking about? Okay,
I
so
know people have mentioned Stranger Things to me,
so you
but
never
I
watched
don't
Stranger
know.
Things.
Yeah.
So Stranger Things, it's like this. I mean, that's really weird because I think it's like this very, at least in the United States. I can't speak to what's. Oh no, it's. I mean, I know it's international too that this is going on. So Stranger Things is like this sort of sci-fi horror series that Netflix does. That's extremely embedded in like 1980s culture. So it's like they took like the best elements of every like horror movie and like cool 80s thing and like distilled it down to like the perfect series of this thing where like demonic monsters from another dimension are like accessing a door and there's all kinds of like 80s intrigue and stuff, but the soundtrack is really incredible. Actually, I'm a little surprised you don't know this, just because like the soundtrack to Stranger Things was one of the things that like kind of ushered in like this revival of analog synthesizers like a few years back, or just like it gave a big boost to it because the soundtrack is like this sort of very 80s sounding thing by a group called Survive. But
Yeah. I think there was a lecture about it at a Moog Fest.
okay, yeah, like so like they've come into the factory and stuff, but like Winona Ryder is the mom in it and stuff. Like there's just all this kind of like homage to 80s stuff. But so the song Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, by chance?
I should.
Okay, you should go look it up. You can
Okay.
listen to it later. It's a great song. It's a song that it was a hit in like 80. I don't know when that was exactly, but early 80s, mid 80s maybe. But it's used in this very potent scene in this movie where basically, like, I don't know, like, mild spoiler alerts for Stranger Things here, that
Oh, careful.
I won't
Careful
get too explicit, but basically there's a scene where this person's love of this particular song is kind of pulls her through this situation. But anyway, it's just a very potent scene that features this music very heavily, and because of that song, like the amount of traffic that was brought to this, what was it, 30-year-old song, made Kate Bush's single become the number one like song in not just America but like all over Europe and like the UK, and the thing is, like, I don't know what portion of people are watching that show out there, but the audience for it, because it's so international, like, it's not just like this song got a big moment. It's like the audience for that song was so much vastly bigger than anything that, Kate Bush, even as like a fairly popular star in the 80s, ever had. They said, I read some count that they estimated she made like $6 million in royalties, like just in the first week of that song.
Whoa.
Just from like streaming and stuff, like, which
It's
is
like
insane, right?
Yeah.
When you consider the
0.02 cents at a time.
and so like in this, I think that there, in some ways it's more fragmented, but maybe we just know that it's more fragmented, too, because there are these cultural moments that, like, even if it's not, even if like you didn't know about it, it still is like so big that it dwarfs things that were happening 30 years ago. But
Yeah. That's interesting. That is so interesting that I think it's a perfect place to land on,
cool.
to end, because I think it's time to jam.
Time to jam.
But are there any hanging threads? Anything else you want to say? Go to the Moog store around 2 this Saturday, July 30th.
Or come at 4 for my set if you don't care about the theremin or the other person playing. But yeah, 2 to 5.
I'm sure the theremin. I really.
It's all gonna be great. You should totally come for the whole time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And free iced coffee? I mean,
Free iced coffee.
come on.
Yeah.
And then October 29th at the Green at Peck Square.
Yeah, the Surreal Circus Arts Festival, and
Very cool. Is
yeah,
that-
check out the album Coronis by Logos, and it's on Spotify now. So
All right, sweet. I always have tech junkies on, and I just wanted to I should just assign maybe assignments to guests who are coming on for free, volunteer. Like, hey, can you read the manual for the tell me what a ring modulator does or something? But I didn't ask you any of those questions.
I mean, do you want to know what a ring modulator does?
Please, yeah, maybe one definite so somebody gets
Oh
an
God, I
educational
might.
nugget.
I feel like I'm gonna screw this up, and you're gonna get angry.
Whichever modulate or
Do you get angry
Lover
emails?
Foger.
Is that a thing?
People are blowing me up about my live stream all the time.
I believe what a ring modulator does, if I can remember this right, is it takes two signals and spits out the sum and the difference of those two frequencies, and so you get these kind of sidebands that. At higher rates, you get sidebands where because you figure 100 hertz and 120 hertz both go into it, then you get 80 hertz and 220 hertz coming out of it. So you get these kind of two different frequencies that shift. So just like frequency modulation, you get kind of like metallic sounding things. I believe
Sometimes
that's correct.
Sometimes some vibrato if the hertz is low enough.
So yeah,
sonic.
so if it's low enough, then like one of those frequencies is going to be below human hearing, and you get like a vibrato. And I love that. I love taking the the
Definitely.
really slow vibrato of a ring modulator, and then like kind of gradually cranking it up.
No, that was perfect because you've added to my knowledge. I was explaining a ring modulator to somebody else, and I knew that you have whatever input you've got going into it, and then the ring modulator itself provides a frequency,
Mhm.
and then those come together to create another frequency. But it being, or I guess it creates two frequencies, is what you're saying. The
Yes.
sum and
Although
the
there's
difference.
like 10% of my brain that's like, no, that's something completely different you're thinking of. And so I apologize if I've just
Okay.
told you completely the wrong information on ring modulators. But
Yeah, I'm not.
I think that's
sure what
correct.
that
I
is.
believe that's what it does.
Well, we're gonna take a quick break. Maybe we'll Google it, or we'll just play with a ring modulator in our jam. But thanks again for joining me
Sure.
on the eighth note.
Thanks
Now,
for having
I
me.
don't know if I'm ready to commit to that. Yeah. All right, let's jam. All right, goodbye Instagram. It was fun, but music doesn't sound great on my cell phone speaker.
check. That's smart. All right. I believe that people can hear us now that we're at the end. Did you have fun?
Yeah, that was great.
That was
Thanks
so
much,
great.
man.
Thanks for coming. You got skills, man. Really making
I
some
know
noise.
way around this one pretty well, but
I wish I had a dedicated pair of speakers for each synth. That's a little much coming out of these monitors. But,
yeah,
really, really a pleasure. That was super good.
yeah, likewise.
I wonder if we'll listen to it in a second, see how it came through. Let's see, where's my camera? Where's my mark? Thanks, Jim Genaro, for being on the Irvin Music Studio, 8 to 10 p.m. Wednesday, weekly live stream, or Eighth Note. Yeah, you think so. Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next week when I have a very special guest on. And you'll have to find out who it is next week. All right.
Very secret.
Yes. Bye.